All right, so here's what we're going to do today. Today I've got some practice questions for us to go over together. For Friday, we will not meet together here. I will send around an exercise for you to work on your own. Next Monday, we will meet here and we will take our exam. You need to bring a device to take the exam on. The exam will be online. However, unless you've made other arrangements with me, you are required to take it here. And tomorrow night at 9 o'clock, there will be a tutor-led review in case you need more practice or want more practice or have more questions that come up after today. So I've already sent that link around about an hour ago, so you can find that in your inbox. One final fun thing is someone has tinkered with the software in this computer and has removed my clicker-oriented software. So we will have to do today's session without that. I will put in the request to IT to fix that immediately. All right, but now let's go over the kinds of questions that we will find on the exam next week. There will be a section on identifying the tone of terms, positive, negative, and neutral tones of terms. So again, the point here is that there are multiple ways to conceptualize and describe different concepts and things. Therefore, we want to try to use neutral rather than overly positive or negative terms. As the old joke goes, I am firm, you are obstinate, and he is pig-headed. And of course, the joke here is those three things are all the same thing. But when it's in me, it's a good thing, it's a virtue, it's firmness. When he does it, he's being a jerk, he's pig-headed. A police officer. Now, police officer is a neutral term. What makes it neutral is that it's minimally descriptive. It's what we call the job. There are also overly positive and overly negative ways that we can describe these people. If we wanted to call the same person or the same job something overly positive, we would call them something like Newport News' finest. If we wanted to call them something overly, more intentionally negative, more self-consciously negative, we would call them something like the fuzz or the pigs, or even the word cop is overly colloquial compared to something like police officer. So again, there are multiple ways to describe the same person doing the same job. An egghead, using the description like an egghead for someone who's intellectual. This is a negative term. It's negative because we are reducing someone to the supposed shape of their head. It has implicit commentary. It's dehumanizing. It's bad in several ways. What would we call an egghead if we wanted to call them something positive or neutral?
I guess a positive term would be intellectual.
Sure, intellectual, that's a compliment. What about something a little more neutral? I mean, you could just call them by their job title, although, professor is a high status job title, so it's even that is, it has a more positive flavor to it. All right, freedom fighters. Positive, neutral, or negative term? What do you think?
Positive.
Positive. Why?
Based on our culture, freedom is perceived as a virtuous thing. They're trying to preserve that or state it in the first place.
Good. So yeah, to define someone in terms of freedom, this is a high value, highly esteemed thing in our culture. So that's has a lot of implicit positive commentary. What would we call this group if we didn't like them? We'd call them terrorists. Now you see how, same people engage in the same action, but whether or not we approve or disapprove of their action, we will load in all sorts of positive or negative commentary, all based on which word we choose to use for them. What if we want to try to be neutral? What might we have to call them?
I guess you could call them like rebel fighters or something, since that could go either way.
Maybe fighters or soldiers. Even calling them rebels has this implicit commentary that they're the ones who are out of power, or maybe that they're inherently illegitimate. Although our culture has a soft spot for rebels, so yeah. But yeah, I think fighters or soldiers would be most neutral, and then rebels. Yeah, it's still probably within the range of neutral. Tax refund adjustment. Frankly, it all depends on what you're describing with this. Do we like tax refunds? Hell yeah. Do we want our tax refund adjusted? It depends. It depends on which direction we're adjusting it, right? Now, this specific phrase is a joke. It is from an old episode of The Simpsons, where President Lisa Simpson is trying to instantiate a tax increase, and Bart says, "Well, I've got the perfect way for you to get your tax increase and still be popular. Just call it tax refund adjustment. You're going to adjust that tax refund way down." Ironically, this episode predicted the presidency of Donald Trump 15 years before anyone thought it was a real thing. It depends on what phenomenon you're actually describing with it. So I won't ask you this one because you need context. in context of the episode, this was an overly positive way of describing a tax increase. All right, definitions. So here's the key, what we're looking for in this section. We want to identify the most serious problem with a particular lexical definition. Our categories will be too broad, too narrow, circular, too vague, and wrong tone. And a key thing that people who have trouble with this, I mean, if you forget bullet point 3, you'll probably get all of them wrong. So don't forget bullet point 3. What this section is doing is we are judging the adequacy of the second term as a substitute for the first. So if you think you're talking about the first term instead of the second term, you're going to cause yourself all sorts of problems. So remember, we are judging the second term, whether or not it is an appropriate definition or what is wrong with using it as a definition for the first term. All right, professor means teacher. What do you think? Too broad. Why is it too broad?
Professors describe a particular level of education, whereas teachers need anywhere from pre-K to say not for.
Sure. So the teacher is too broad. Why? Because there are lots of people who are teachers who are not professors, and frankly, because professors do a lot more than just teach. I mean, we're supposed to write books and articles and run experiments and do cool stuff like that. So teachers is this giant category that includes all sorts of people that aren't professors.
In terms of how this question is set up, would that answer be used for the word teacher or the aspect of teachers?
Good. So this again refers to the point made in the third bullet point of the previous slide. We are always talking about the second term. So, and as a point, we keep that in mind because if you think we're talking about the first term, you'll give the opposite of the right answer on a consistent basis. So, teacher is too big. Professor is a littler group. So good, yes. Redskins player means lazy bum. How's that for a definition?
Wrong tone?
So, actually, spot on, don't you think? No, wrong tone. Yeah, wrong tone. It shifts from someone's team description to this very negative, pejorative term about them. It shifts tone pretty flagrantly. I need to update my slides. Washington team player means lazy bum. President means one who presides, of course. What's wrong with this definition? Someone not in the front. Yes, sir. Good. Yes, this is circular. What makes this circular? Yeah, presides is the root word for president. If you don't know what president means, you probably don't know what presides means either, and it doesn't really help very much. Lie means false statement.
Okay.
Well, why would you go with vague?
I don't know. Weird thing on the multiple that said a mistake could be a false statement to something.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Oh, it's too broad.
Yeah, I mean, you can make an argument for some of the others, but too broad is the most flagrant problem here. Why is it too broad?
Because false statement can apply to anything that's just a false statement. It doesn't have the intention of deceiving someone.
Good. Look, we all say lots of wrong things all the time that aren't on purpose, that aren't lies. If you get something wrong on a test, did you lie on the test? No, it was just a mistake. If the weatherman incorrectly predicts the weather, that's not a lie, it's just a mistake. So false statement, incorrect statement is this huge category. Lie is this smaller category of sort of intentionally manipulative, incorrect, misleading statements. So false statement is a very broad category compared to lies. How about this? Lie means slander. Yes, what's too narrow about it?
Slander implies a specific type of lie.
Good, good. So slander isn't just any old lie. Slander is a specific personally destructive lie. So it has to be personally harmful. So for example, here's something else that's a lie that would not be slander. If your roommate or significant other says, hey, how do I look in this outfit? And you smile and say, oh, that looks great. Because that's what they want to hear. And if that's not true, if they just look okay or whatever, that is a lie. You're intentionally misleading, but that's not slander. Slander is a much more personally destructive kind of lie. So slander is a smaller category than just sort of generic lies. Even self-interested lies aren't slander. If I lie about my income to get a loan or something like that, that is a lie, but it's not slander. Slander, again, is sort of personally destructive lying. I'd also say there's a tone shift here. So that would also be correct in this case. Because slander is a much more serious, much more culpable kind of lie. Yes?
So this question we're on the exam, would you want the answer to be more too narrow rather than wrong?
I would prefer too narrow. I'd probably accept both, but I think too narrow is still kind of a better answer. But wrong tone is good enough that I'd probably have to give you credit. In general, I will try to avoid asking questions that I feel like I have to give credit for more than one answer. But that's one of the sort of good and frankly frustrating things about this section from my point of view is, most of the course is not like that. So, you can't really try to make a case for other answers, but something like that one, something like what's wrong with this definition? Well, we live in a messed up world where a definition can have two terrible things wrong with it. And that's just the way it is. All right, next section will be claims that are analytic, synthetic, or self-contradictory. Brief reminder, analytic claims are claims where the denial of the claim is self-contradictory or that the claim is included in the meaning of the subject term. Self-contradictory claims are claims that are internally inconsistent and therefore self-refuting. And synthetic claims are claims that are neither analytically true nor self-contradictory. They make coherent claims that go beyond the meanings of the terms involved. So 3 categories. A triangle has 3 sides. What do we think? Which categorization of that? Yes, sir. Yeah, this one's analytic. Remember, mathematical truths, including geometric truths, are analytic because that is how we define the system. Triangles always have 3 sides. And as I told you disturbingly the other day, there are no actual triangles in the empirical world. That bachelor is married. What do you think?
Self-contradictory.
Self-contradictory, right. The word bachelor means unmarried man. So to say that bachelor is married is to contradict your terms. It's like saying that triangle has 4 sides. It's like saying that spaceship drives well on the road. It's a contradiction of terms. All right, that bachelor is ugly.
Synthetic.
Yeah, that's synthetic. There's nothing about bachelor doesn't mean ugly man, but it's not a contradiction of terms. It's possible that a bachelor is ugly. It's conceptually conceivable. All bachelors either are or are not messy. Give it a crack.
Analytic.
Yeah, this one's analytic. What makes this one analytic?
Either or.
Good. This is one that a lot of people get wrong. This one is analytic, but not because of the words bachelors and messy. So people who fixate on the words bachelor's and messy here often get this one wrong. This one is analytic because of the meanings of the words all and either are or are not. Anything with the pattern all, noun, either is or is not predicates, is true. Any sentence with that structure is true. Because of the meanings of the words all and either are or are not. This is called the law of excluded middle. So there are a few sentences like this I could ask that are subtle in that they are true, but not because of the noun or subject or predicate terms. Yes?
Oh, what did you say that it was called again?
This is called the law of excluded middle. When you say something either is or is not. And there are famous counterexamples. So one famous counterexample is the baldness problem. At what point do you call someone bald? So does somebody have to be a perfectly hairless cue ball to be bald? So one might ask that great philosophical question, is Homer Simpson bald? Because Homer, it's well known, has exactly 3 hairs on his head. So one can question whether the law is true. In either case, anything with this pattern is considered to be analytically true. All right, a priori and a posteriori terms. Again, these are 2 ways to categorize truth claims based on how the claims would have to be proven, justified, or disproven. A priori claims are claims provable apart from sense experience, and this includes all definitions. Note that if something is potentially provable both ways, then the claim is a priori, because a priori is the harder of the 2, rarer of the 2. A posteriori claims are claims that need sense experience to demonstrate the truthfulness or falsity of the claim. All right, all bachelors are unmarried. Yes. Yeah, that's a priori. Why? Yeah, it's just a definition. You don't need to do any big study to figure this out. You just need to understand the definition. If you understand the definition, you understand automatically that this is true. Now note, you could try to prove this by going around and doing a huge survey of bachelors and saying, wow, 10,000 out of 10,000 bachelors are unmarried. Who would have predicted that? But it's still a priori because it's true in light of the way the word works. Yes, sir.
Do a priori statements usually have to do with like concepts?
Typically, yes. Conceptual ideas are often a priori, or typically a priori, because you don't have to use your eyes, you don't have to use your 5 senses to confirm conceptual ideas. Conceptual ideas are just the way certain things are defined. Whereas when you make specific claims about specific physical things, those will need empirical verification and therefore are a posteriori. Again, at least that's the general principle. All swans are white.
A posteriori.
Good, that's a posteriori. Why?
Those swans are typically white or black swans.
Yeah, so one thing, there's an exception to the rule, but more importantly, the way that we typically define species is based on genetic patterns, not based on color of feathers. Water boils at 90 degrees centigrade on that 10,000 foot mountain. A priori, a posteriori. Which is, yes, ma'am. Good, a posteriori. Why?
Because we don't know much information about that mountain.
Good. So a couple things. One is that, it gives us that specific, we're making that specific claim. Now, scientifically, we would predict that should be true based on what we know about the way boiling points work. But the way to prove it is to go climb that mountain and and try to boil some water. How about water boils at 100 degrees centigrade at sea level? Yes, sir.
A priori,
Yeah, this one's a priori. Why? This looks so similar to the previous one.
because the boiling point water was defined at sea level.
Yeah, the centigrade scale specifically defines its 0 and 100 point in terms of the boiling point of water at sea level under normal atmospheric conditions. So therefore, although this one looks a lot like the previous one, the answer is different. It's a priori because that's the way the centigrade scale defines a boiling point. Everything red is colored. Yes, sir.
A priori,
Yeah, that one's a priori. Why?
because red is defined as a color, and
Right. Loaded into the word red is the concept of anything red possesses the color red. So, it's the idea of being colorful is loaded into the idea of redness. Okay. We will also have a section requiring you to know key definitions. And this includes the words we've used in several of these previous exercises. You'll need to know the definition of a priori and a posteriori. You'll need to know the defining facts or traits of each of the fallacies we've described. You'll need to know the definition of synthetic, analytic, and contradictory, and the definitions of pragmatism and positivism, which we've not yet mentioned this class. So you'll need to know, be able to recognize and give definitions for key terms for chapter 3 and the beginning of chapter 4. All right, so which of these terms refers to the view that if there's no way to test a statement, then that statement is meaningless? Yeah, that's positivism. Positivism is the idea, it's an old view that you need to be able to test claims for them to have meaning, and that unverifiable claims are meaningless. Which term refers to claims that are internally incoherent?
So contradictory.
Yeah, that's self-contradictory. That bachelor is married, that triangle has 4 sides, that frog is not a frog. All of these claims are incoherent. And then, of course, there are others that are jokes. Some would say military intelligence, jumbo shrimp, tasty Diet Cola. Okay, which fallacy illegitimately narrows the possibilities to only 2 options? Which fallacies operates by narrowing the possibilities to only 2 options? Yeah, good. That's the black and white fallacy, also called the false dilemma. So it's good to know, it's important to know how each fallacy operates and be able to identify the paradigmatic traits. Which term refers to the view that if the truth of a claim could make no practical difference, then the claim is meaningless? Yes?
pragmatism.
Yeah, that's pragmatism. Interesting. Pragmatism is virtually the only distinctly American philosophy, and it is the claim that claims are to be understood in terms of the practical differences their truth or falsity would make, and claims with no potential practical differences are therefore meaningless. Okay. Then we will have a section on the fallacies. So what we want to do is sort of identify the most specific or paradigmatic fallacy relevant to each of the arguments from each of those offered. So here, Peter says, Based on the arguments I presented, it's evident that it's morally wrong to use animals for food or clothing. But Bill objects. Wait, you're wearing a leather jacket and you have a roast beef sandwich in your hand. How can you say that using animals for food and clothing is wrong? Which fallacy do we see here? Which fallacy is Bill committing? Yes. Yeah, it's ad hominem. What makes it an ad hominem?
Direct characteristics, like it's sort of like what he's, yeah, I guess it's like his loving nature.
Good. So he's changed the topic from whether, eating animals for food and clothing is wrong to a different topic. What sort of behavior is Peter actually engaged in? Now, I mean, it's pretty bizarre that Peter is making these arguments while, not living out his own ethical philosophy. But Bill hasn't refuted the views. He's just showed that Peter's a hypocrite. And that is a discussion of his character and therefore an ad hominem. It's a true ad hominem, but it's still a fallacy. Either we must pass my health care bill or we must burn senior citizens' homes to the ground. When I run for office, this will be my argument. Black and white. What makes it black and white?
There's only two options.
Good. There's only two options, mine and this crazy option that no sane person would consider. So it attempts to bias the conversation by only offering two options, and one of them is insane. Most people think Fight Club is the best movie ever, and so should you. Yes. Yeah, that's appeal to the crowd. Everyone thinks so, therefore it's true. That's the standard appeal to the crowd ad populum fallacy. Silverman is showing iRobot tomorrow night. I always knew he had to be a cyborg. Now this is one a lot of people get wrong, so I will explain it. This is an ambiguity fallacy. Look closely. The argument claims Silverman is a cyborg. Why is he a cyborg? Because he's showing a movie called iRobot. Now, of course, iRobot is in fact a title to a movie. But the interpreter here misunderstands the title to this movie starring Will Smith, originally written by Isaac Asimov, and somehow applies it to Silverman as if it's my autobiography. Again, to spot ambiguity fallacies, you need to read things closely and see if there are multiple ways of reading an argument or claim. Many of them sound like a joke if you look at them closely. After 20 years of experimentation, no one has proven that pot is harmful, so pot must be safe. Yes, that is the argument from ignorance. We haven't proven one way or the other, therefore we should assume my preferred viewpoint. And actually, just as we're legalizing it, all sorts of bad news has come out recently about pot. Shocking. You shouldn't vote for him. Only a commie would vote for him. Yes, ma'am. Well, there is some stereotyping here. I'd probably only include stereotype or opposition here. I think opposition is a slightly better answer, and here's why. The logic of the argument is this. There's this group that we don't like, and they're doing something. Therefore, we should go out and not do that thing, because we don't want to be like the commies. So opposition is probably a moderately better answer. Although, if I were to include both those answers, I could probably be persuaded to give you credit for either stereotype or opposition. It's a messed up world. There can be multiple things wrong with an argument. What is the world coming to? All right. Well, that is the sampling of questions that I've prepared. I've intentionally left us 10 to 12 minutes. What other questions can I answer for you to help prepare you for this exam? Yes, sir.
How can you tell when an argument is too vague, and we're defining a lexical definition?
Yeah. So when do we know a definition is too vague? Usually either one term is really vague, or the relationship between the terms is very vague. So a traditional claim is that goodness is being. Now that's probably a definition that's too vague, because most people don't know what goodness is, and most people don't know what being is. Another thing that might be vague is beauty is ideal mathematical proportions. Again, it's the connection between beauty and mathematical proportions, at least to most people, is somewhat vague. But yeah, so for vagueness, look for terms that are poorly understood or a relationship that's poorly understood. Yes, sir.
So for the fallacies and such, are we gonna have something similar to what we did on the board, or is there gonna be any section where we have to write out which one from memory?
Oh, lucky you. This will be all multiple choice. By the way, don't be fooled. Multiple choice exams in general are not easier. I have kept statistical track of in certain classes and sort of switched between essay and multiple choice exams. People do about 5 points better on average on my essay exams, because I can give you partial credit for, showing me that you mostly understood it. But with multiple choice, I have to be in the situation where you either get it or you don't. So study hard, despite the fact that it's a multiple choice exam. Other questions? Yes, sir.
So how would you tell the difference between a logical positivism claim and a posteriori claim?
Those are I'm not going to ask you to make those will never be two comparative categories. So you're not going to have to know. That's kind of like asking, how do you know the difference between yellow and a soprano? I mean, those are just sort of two categories that
I was
don't.
just wondering if they both involve like empirical sentences.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, but I won't ask you. I won't ask you questions where you choose between those. I'm hoping there will be a clear answer, a clear best answer. It's possible that after the fact, on one or two, I'll be persuaded to accept more than one answer, because we live in a messed up world where more than one thing can be a really serious problem with something. That being said, for the fallacies especially, look for the paradigm patterns, and that's what I'm going to be looking for those. Anything else? Well, don't forget the tutor-led review tomorrow night. I'm not in a rush, so if anybody wants to hang out and ask some more questions, you can hang out and you can ask me questions about the fallacies or about the nature of being itself or whatever. You've got me for a few more minutes. Otherwise, go. Enjoy your lunch, enjoy the weather, stay COVID safe. Thank you very much. Sure. Sure. Oh. Right here on campus? The first or second? First business wasn't a big deal. I did, everyone reacts different. It's kind of weird. My body, I have a weird temperature regulation problem with my body. So I felt too cold the night I got the first vaccine, and I just needed like an extra blanket. Now, for the second dose, it was much more serious. I felt like the chills, like I had a messed up fever. And then I did the thing where I bundled up way too much because I had the chills, and then 3 hours later, I woke up sweating and had to remove things, and then and I kept ping ponging between being too hot and too cold. But totally worth it, totally worth it. So wow, we're giving it to students now. That's awesome.
Yeah, student workers just got to put fast track through the system, so.
Excellent. I'm so glad to hear that.
For the extra credit, that part one extra credit.
Yes.
This is such a dumb question, so how do you know, like, was there attendance?
There was attendance based on who logged into the Zoom call.
Okay,
So don't worry, you'll get your credit.
okay.
And if the department fails to get me a list of people, I'll just have to ask and take people's words.
Okay.
Which I hate to take people's words, but you will get credit no matter what. I know you would.
Yeah, one of the people speaking, one of the juniors is actually a president of the club that I'm in.
Oh, excellent.
Cool to hear her speak, so,
Which club?
Molly win.
Oh,
I
fun.
absolutely love it, yes, debate. So,
Excellent debate. You should hang out in philosophy.
this is hard, but I like it, it's just hard.
Yeah, so that's you're not wrong. Well, debate is hard if you're gonna do it right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
so
you.
So I'm just wondering, I think I'm sorry in trouble getting the clicker. Do you suggest I still go through try and get it, or?
We're halfway through the semester. I wouldn't worry about it. Okay. It is what it is. Just make sure that you're attempting problems as we do them in class. That's the real value of the clicker, is the forcing everyone to attempt the problems, because the more engaged you are and the more you attempt these things yourself, the more you learn.
Yeah, I always write them down in my notebook and I'll put like an answer and then when possible, I did get it.
Excellent. You're welcome.
After that,